Well, hello, good morning, good night, good afternoon. Today we're with the IESE Startup Entrepreneurship Club. We've been doing these sessions with the different clubs at IESE. This is it's a core part of the program. It's not mandatory, but it's one of the most rewarding parts of the whole process. So we'll leave you with the leadership team, and then they'll be able to tell you all about the activities of the club and how IESE supports you if you're interested in the startups and entrepreneurship. So I'll leave it to you guys. Thank you very much.
Cool, thanks, Andrea. Can everyone hear me okay on the call? I see some faces and screens on, cameras on, but not everyone. If it's easy for you guys and your connection is good enough to turn your camera on, be appreciated so we don't feel like we're talking to just a blank screen. Cool, that's a lot better. So welcome. I'll give a quick introduction of just who's on the call, because the leadership team of the Startup and Entrepreneurship Club is quite big. We have about 10 second-year students and now about 15 first-year directors as part of the club. So a big team of 25, and we just have a subset of that here today. So I'll introduce the team and the club briefly, and I'll try to get to the question and answer period as soon as possible, because I think that we're mostly interested in what you guys are curious about in terms of startup and entrepreneurship here at IESE. So the four people we have on the call, the first one is Federico, who's online. He's the executive VP of the club. He also works in business development and is the first employee at a startup here in Barcelona called Payflow. He often wears t-shirts and ripped jeans, so he's about as stereotypical startup person as we possibly have at IESE. The second person is Sarah Zhu. She's a first year, but she's already quite involved in the club, and she's a director, mostly in everything related to developing founders. So how to start your own business and what those first steps are. In the past, she was a Scrum Master and an Agile coach. She's sitting here in the room with me, and she'll be able to speak a lot to how easy it is to get involved in some of the initiatives, basically from day one at IESE, and maybe even a touch before day one, if I remember right. The third person is Emily Mendez de Leon. She's a VP, a second year in the club, focused on mostly alumni and networking. She came to IESE as a founder. She founded her own business called Mystery City Games, which basically does treasure hunts in cities, kind of like Escape the Room, but outdoors in different cities in Europe so far. She has one in Barcelona, so if I could do a shameless plug, it's actually a really good way to get to know the city when you show up here. And she also is one of the leaders of the wine club, so she gets a lot of us drunk on a regular basis. And I'm Robert. I'm the president of the Startup and Entrepreneurship Club. Before coming to IESE, I was a management consultant, so don't hold it against me. But since being here at IESE, I'm super involved in the club, and basically touch on a little bit of everything, maybe slightly more towards the founder side and everything that touches starting your own business. Cool. Can everyone hear me okay? I got a note that the sound's not super clear. Yeah. Okay. Great. Okay. So moving on, just what we'll talk about today. Do a quick exercise to give you an idea of the type of stuff that we do in the Startup Club, which is starting our own business, which we'll do all together. Then we'll talk about the club. I'll ask you, like I said, Q&A and maybe some next steps for you guys. So a pretty simple agenda. Like I said, we'll focus as much as we can on your questions. But first of all, okay, if I could fast forward you guys from being prospective students, which you are now, and I could take you all the way to second year, okay? And there's a second year course called Advanced Operations, which is one of the hardest courses of IESE. And in the first class, this is the question that we get, okay? So I'll turn it over to you guys in a second, but there are two cities, A and B, and they're 1,000 kilometers apart, okay? And we have 3,000 bananas in city A, and we have an elephant, which can carry 1,000 bananas at a time. And we want to try to get all these 3,000 bananas from city A to city B and have some left over. The thing is, the elephant eats a banana every kilometer. Okay, so we want to know, this is a serious question that I got in operations in second year. What is the maximum number of bananas that we could transfer to B without being eaten by the elephant? And it's a pretty complex problem, but if anyone, I turn it over to you guys and ask if there's any ideas about how we could efficiently get the bananas from A to B, because obviously if the elephant carries 1,000 the whole way, He'll eat all of them by the time he gets to B, and there'll be none left. Anyone have any ideas? I won't move on from this slide until at least I get at least 1 or 2 responses. So somebody has to help me out. It could be Kelly or Andrea as well.
I didn't do advanced operations, so I can't help you either.
No one's gonna help me out? Guys, this could be a long haul.
You can, if you don't want to speak out, you can also put it on the chat.
Yeah, you could also
Well,
put
you
on.
you never specified that the bananas need to be transported by elephants, so you can just take a plane.
Ah, interesting. Okay. Vitor, I think you have one as well.
Yeah, hey, this is Vitor from Brazil. So one way, I'm not sure exactly how the number of bananas, but the elephant could transport like 1,000 bananas for 10 kilometers and then come back, pick another 1,000 bananas and then take these 10 kilometers again. And I'm not sure that 10 kilometers is the best approach. But then at the time he gets to that point that he left the bananas, he can go a little bit further and then keep coming back to do this progressively.
Got it. Yeah, that's a good idea. And it's actually the answer is something like that. Okay. So with that kind of process where you go bit by bit and take the bananas, just if you optimize the operations of the bananas, right? Obviously the elephant has to eat some along the way, but the answer is you could get up to 3,533 to city B, right? And so that's just purely by learning the operations. That said, it's Startup and Entrepreneurship Club, right? And that's what you guys are interested in. So if we break some of those constraints down, we think a little bit more entrepreneurially, right? Then we can stretch that 533 a little bit, right? So for example, right, you could build an edtech platform teaching elephants to eat apples and not just bananas, right? And if you did that, then definitely you'd be able to get more than 533 bananas, right? You'd fuel the elephant partially on apples. You could also find an engineer, start a drone company, and instead of transporting those bananas, like I think Jack said, you transport them by drones, right? And you could get all 3,000 there without any of them being eaten by the elephant. Or lastly, you could raise some venture capital funding, start a banana farm in City B, right? And you'd have an infinite number of bananas in City B for as long as you wanted. And this is the kind of stuff I feel like an activity like this is some of the stuff that we do in the Startup and Entrepreneurship Club, right? We don't just, I wouldn't be able to just give you a lecture on operations, but we'd actually try to crowdsource and come up with ideas like a couple of you mentioned, and see if we can make something even bigger than just the core problem. And I think that's the difference that you'll find in a club like this versus a course for sure, and even potentially some of the other clubs at IESE. Cool. So to get a little bit more serious and talk a little bit more about the club's activities. So the Startup and Entrepreneurship Club is one of the most popular clubs at IESE. About a third of IESE students are members. A third of IESE students approximately start a business at some point in their careers. And so even if they're not starting companies right after IESE or during the MBA, like a few people do, but not as many, over the course of your career, a lot of the stuff that we do in the club is relevant and students are interested in. About a fifth of IESE students intern at a startup over the summer. And in the second year, there are over 60 students that are working on a startup through, whether it's through the club or some of their classes and things like that. The Startup and Entrepreneurship Club is really a platform to foster entrepreneurship. Okay, and it's about engaging the whole community, and we offer some programs that we'll talk about in a little bit. There are other resources on IESE around entrepreneurship beyond just the club. So the club is like a student-run, student-funded, student-led group that has some of these activities. But IESE also has entrepreneurship-related courses. They have entrepreneurship, like a center for entrepreneurship that helps students, get funding and things like that. And IESE is really at the forefront in some very specific areas of entrepreneurship. Some of you may have heard of search funds, which is like entrepreneurship by acquisition. Some of you may have heard of technology transfer, which is basically taking, resources from scientific institutions and turning them into businesses. Some of you may have heard of corporate entrepreneurship, which is basically like coming up with a business within a business. And IESE is like really at the forefront of some of those specific areas of entrepreneurship. The club is meant in a way to fill in, in between some of those and be more generalist. Anything that you think about entrepreneurship, at any time you want to start a company or work in a startup, the club is much more broad-based than that. And that, it's not about the kind of tip of the spear in research in certain areas. It's anything that you want to do. Does that make sense? Thumbs up or thumbs down, just if I keep going, or questions on that? Cool. So as I mentioned, it's a platform on entrepreneurship. We offer resources to members, things like how to start a pitch deck for your business, or how to start, if you have an idea, how to start working on it. We do a bunch of events and have a lot of communication over Slack within the club. And then we also act in a way as a link to the broader IESE and Barcelona community. So we have a lot of partnerships with accelerators in the city, with different clubs like VC, which is obviously linked to entrepreneurship, different organizations like Barcino and Barcelona Activa that foster entrepreneurship in the city. So when you show up on campus, you could go and find Barcino yourself and find Demium yourself, and you can go, but if you go through the club, it makes it easier because it's kind of like a one source point, and then you can branch out from there. So this part of the presentation, I'll try to basically sum up some of our biggest programs and events in a sentence or two, right? And then I have a bunch of backup material on each one of these bullet points, but I find that if we were to go through each and every one of them, it would take quite a bit of time. And so, like I said, I'm more curious about what you guys want to know about. So I'll try to do just a one or two sentence, and then if you have questions, some of the team can hopefully avoid me from talking too much, which would be great for all of us. The Startup and Entrepreneurship Club has this long, hyphenated name of startup and entrepreneurship because the club spans those two things, right? The entrepreneurship side of things is more about people who want to start their own business. The startup side of things is people who want to often work in a startup after the MBA. And there's a lot of gray zone, or in this case, dark red zone in between, right? Like they're not exclusive, but to give you an idea of the spectrum, we'll start on the entrepreneurship side, and then I'll talk about the startup side, and then you guys can prod more where you're interested in. On the entrepreneurship side, so Startup School, the first bullet, is basically a group of entrepreneurs that get together often that want to found their own business. And so they meet every few weeks, they talk about certain business ideas they want to start, and they try to create teams to actually develop that business over the course of the MBA or afterwards. The hackathon is a condensed version of that, in that there's usually like a weekend or a long weekend where we give a prompt where it's like start a business that has to do, this year it was start a business that has to do with confinement because of COVID-19. And people would spend the weekend trying to actually launch a business from Friday to Sunday night. And then there'd be a series of judges and a winner. So it's a much more kind of condensed, distilled, intense weekend. But what came out of it's pretty impressive. The Summer Entrepreneurship Experience is a program offered by the school where instead of doing an internship at a traditional company, you can actually start your own business with some students. Barcelona Tech Transfer Group is a group that is, it's a collaboration between the school and students where we can kind of consult for deep tech companies in the Barcelona area. There's speakers and networking that kind of happens all the time. That's more ad hoc, but every time you find an interesting speaker to come to the school, they'll come and speak. The Crown Trivia is a trivia series where every night people would log in and answer startup-related questions for prizes.
Okay. We'll come back to that.
Okay, we could come back to that. The Barcelona Startup Trek in this year will be virtual, but usually when it's in person, and probably by the time you guys are here, it will be in person. It's basically we visit 4 or 5 startups in the city, hear about what they do, see their offices, and just learn about their business. There are plenty of mentorship opportunities both within the IESE walls and outside of it, and we can talk more about kind of the specific mentors that we've had so far and what the school is thinking of doing in the future. The Startup Experience is a pairing service where basically students can meet with startups and do like a 2, 3, 4 week project that's very like a, identified project within a business, within a startup, to learn what it's like to work in a startup, what that startup is like, what type of projects are available for MBAs, and then sometimes students can, do their internship or get a full-time offer in that startup afterwards. And then there are career forums for startups. So the school runs a career forum every year that's specifically around startups that we help, bring some of the most up-and-coming startups in Europe and potentially elsewhere to campus to talk to students about their, about their startups. Like I said, super condensed, and the team that's with me here is really involved in a lot of these areas. Like I said, the Crown Trivia is something that Emily was primarily doing. Startup School, Sarah has been running this year. The Startup Experience is something I was involved in. Federico, the Startup Trek is something that he organized in different career forums. So in the room, we have people who have been much more involved in each of these initiatives over their time at IESE and can speak to them. And I think at this point, it would make sense to just turn it over to you guys and see what about the club do you want to dig a little bit further into? Or, I know some of you have also been to presentations from other professional clubs at IESE, so maybe there's something that, they touched on that we can touch on as well. So anything around the club, we're happy to talk about, or any of those specific initiatives. You guys can either ask them or write in the chat, and we can come back to them. But here are some maybe starter ideas to break the ice. Anything else that you guys want to add as well? No? But I will need some help from some questions. I mean, well, I guess if there are no questions, it's going to be a very short call.
I have.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice to meet everyone. I got disconnected the last 10 minutes because my computer shut down. But I am interested in number 2. So provided you sign up to the club, what are the activities that you can get involved with? And
sure.
Say,
okay.
That, as a member, what kind of activities do you do?
Yeah, so I guess through the club, I mean, you sign up and you get access to all the activities, or the vast majority of them are members, club members only, or some of them have an option where they'd be like free for members, but then paid for non-members. So the idea is like, I may have a slide down here on what the membership fee, what kind of it goes to. It's a 30 € membership fee because, like I said, it's totally student run. And everyone says that the membership fee is more than worthwhile, but it's really for food and drink and networking events, gifts when we have external speakers, we offer them gifts. Some of the competitions have prizes like the hackathon or the crown. We support some of the startup school businesses. There's tools like that for certain events that we need, like sometimes we need a special Zoom subscription or something like that. So the costs of the club add up. And so we just charge a small membership fee when you first join IESE, but you're kind of a member for life once you join. And in fact, a lot of people, assuming you guys are on this call, it's because you're interested in startups and entrepreneurship. A lot of people join even before they arrive at campus for a couple of the clubs that they're most interested in, because it's kind of a well, maybe self-serving answer, but it's a bit of a no-brainer to join some of these clubs.
Can I?
Yes, go.
Okay. Now, firstly, I would like to say that for the bananas and elephants, also you can hide bananas under apples, or you can take a tree of bananas on the elephant. But this apart, I would like to ask a little bit more about the mentorship experience. If you can say something more about that.
I can grab that one. You guys are supposed to ask questions that they want to. They're not supposed to go to me. Anyway, the mentorship areas at IESE is IESE has a platform specifically around career counseling, and some of the mentors are more focused on different areas. Like consulting has certain mentors, finance has certain mentors. For us, this is a screenshot from last year where Luca was really our key mentor that could then redirect people. And I would say that he's still probably the best person when you come to campus because he's extremely well connected within Barcelona to different startups at different stages. But I think it's also misleading to think that there's only one name on this list because, you know, Luca will often, depending on what you're interested in, Luca can connect you to someone in that space and then you get mentorship through them. There's other initiatives that are in progress, things like entrepreneurs in residence that will basically be experienced entrepreneurs that are on campus 1 or 2 days a week. But I think they're not like officialized yet. They're maybe kind of unofficial and they run through Luca at the current stage. By the time you guys get here, this list might be, you know, have a bunch of those entrepreneurs directly on them so that you can book directly with them. But to be honest, I'm not sure what the status is. I would say that's for like the mentorship provided by the school. Then in terms of the club, I mean, I think a lot of times within the club, for example, Emily founded her own business before coming to IESE. I was someone who wanted to start a business within IESE. I found Emily pretty quickly through the first couple networking events of the club. And then she taught me a lot about, you know, digital marketing and stuff like that. So there's also the informal, you know, mentorship that you get from just friends and colleagues that you have in the club.
I would say on top of that as well, like entrepreneurship in general is something that requires a lot of self-direction and self-initiative. If you don't have that, then you're probably not going to be a founder anyway. And so if you do have that, then the resources are there, but you need to go find out who's best. There have been professors that have been, let's say, just not as versed in the space where I work, but I know they've been immensely helpful to other people who have started businesses at IESE. And on the contrary, I've also had professors that have been immensely helpful in taking a mentorship role for me, but haven't been able to help some of my colleagues in the same way because of their own interests and connections. So most of it's what you make of it, but that's founding a company anyway. So I think that all comes together.
Great, thank you.
Gabor, Mohammed, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, I'll try. So I think my question falls into the fifth category for someone who doesn't have a particular idea for starting a business or doesn't bring, you know, a tech or previous entrepreneurial experience. Does it still make sense to join the club to explore? And are there any success stories with people, you know, of this type that joined and in the end they went into the startup world?
I can pick that one up then. I think entrepreneurship is something that can be taught and can be learned, right? Part of it is learning by learning frameworks and things that are already written in how you do it. And the other part of it is also learning by doing, like really hands-on learning. But I shall tell you that probably the idea is the least important part of the process. Like most of the successful businesses you see worldwide were one day started by entrepreneurs, but it wasn't theirs original idea, or the idea pivoted a lot from the beginning to the end. So I definitely think that if you're curious and you're interested in entrepreneurship as a career, in entrepreneurship as a field of study, actually, it makes a lot of sense to join the club. And a lot of the things that you can learn about entrepreneurship are applicable to other careers as well, right? Like lean methodology, growing a business, let's say user interviews, a lot of things that you can learn in entrepreneurship are really applicable to other fields and other careers. So yeah, I would say, like, I consider myself an entrepreneur. I don't have ideas, and I have learned a lot about entrepreneurship through the club and by spending time with the people in the club.
I'll just add on to what Fede said. So for example, yesterday, I believe, or the day before, we had one of our first sessions for Startup School, which was actually Idea Pitch Day. So this was an event where, you know, people with ideas shared what their ideas were, and then those just without ideas but interested and curious about startups and entrepreneurship were online to kind of hear the different pitches, offer a tiny bit of feedback, because maybe you worked in that industry before and you're probably way more of a subject matter expert than the person pitching. And then now we're in the stage of matching, you know, founders and people who are interested in working in a startup up, so that they can progress through the startup school program and then kind of work together on bringing the idea to life. So I definitely think it's still valuable to join even if you don't have your own idea. And I think after yesterday's session, some of the feedback I got was, oh, this pitch that I heard of actually made me think of you know, this other thing that we could do with da-da-da. So I think that being in the community of entrepreneurs can sometimes spur your own, you know, creative juices.
Thank you.
Hi guys, if I can go next.
Yeah, go for it.
Sure, thank you. So my question is about more about question number 4. If you can just lay out the landscape of careers in the startup area. If you can just talk to us about the process, any success stories, what type of startups recruit MBAs and so on. Thank you so much.
Fede, do you want to take that one?
Yeah. So, yeah. So, like, the school typically organizes career fairs, right? You will see different like stages on different career fairs. For startups, we have a career fair that usually takes place closer to March and April, usually because startups are dynamic. So in general, they cannot recruit in October, November, December for the summer, right? Or for like full-time positions. In the sense, so like, yeah, it's usually March and April. This year we had a really successful one with a lot of startups, a lot of participants, and as Robert said, like around 20% of the class interned at a startup. And I see every day I see more and more appetite for people to work at startups and to intern at the startups. I am one of those. You will see startups from different sizes. I shall say all the way from early stage, like seed stage, to late A or Series B, as Wallbox that is there, right? Obviously, you will find a larger presence of Spanish and the startups from Barcelona, but not exclusively, right? Obviously, geography plays a role. And yeah, the ones that you can see there, you will see batteries and electric vehicles, you will see software for restaurants, you will see some e-commerce, I don't know, a couple of fintechs. Well, I am working in a fintech myself. So yeah, I mean, many different ones and from different stages. And yeah, there is appetite for like IESE MBAs in the startup ecosystem, even though it's not the most traditional career path, right?
Yeah, go for it.
So I did the BTTG program, for example, last term. So we ended up working with the startup called Bluephage, just doing some kind of marketing, go-to-market strategy planning for them. And I know, for example, that they were also like looking for a new marketing director, I think, so maybe you would do senior, but help with marketing in that department. So for example, I think that could have easily turned into some sort of internship or something if I wanted to continue working with the company. So I think, for example, the BTTG program is a really great opportunity to get to know a few startups while you're still in your first year, and then that could transition into an internship, or I think was it said that he's actually now working with them part-time in his second year with the one that he was working with. So that's another opportunity.
Yeah, there's not, so the one caveat that I would make around employment though is that timelines of IESE for employment spans through like the whole first year, in the sense that depending on what you're interested in, you may be recruiting very early in your time at IESE, almost as soon as you walk in the door, or you may be, you know, looking for a job in April of your first year, and that has nothing to do with, you know, your own skill set or things like that. It's just that different types of companies recruit at different times. Consulting and usually investment banks, those roles are usually, there's a lot of interview and prep and stuff in the fall. But startups, especially the early stage ones, don't know their needs for the summer until you know, the summer. So like they don't know if they'll, some of them don't know if they'll exist in the summer when it's only October because they're looking for funding and things like that. So if you are interested in working in a startup, it takes a little bit of patience, but also, like Sarah mentioned, you have time in the fall to focus on some of the experiences on campus more than just purely recruiting, because you can do some of these programs like Barcelona Tech Transfer Group or Startup School, or things that aren't maybe directly employment related or recruiting related, but in a lot of cases they lead to your job because you volunteer at a startup and then you like them and they like you and you continue through the summer. So as long as you have that mindset and, you know, patience and attitude, then there's a lot of opportunities to get into recruiting and working in a startup.
Cool, amazing, thank you.
Hi, could I go next, please?
Sure, I think Daniel, just you.
Oh yeah, okay.
I'm having trouble remembering the chat because we talked for a
Yeah,
while.
Daniel goes before me.
Daniel, go ahead, and then maybe.
Okay, thank you. I have two specific questions. First, what is exactly the aim of the involvement of the club in this technology transfer group? Is it like to meet like deep technological science startups and try to look for partners inside from partners from IESE students that could give like the business part of that startup? That's one thing. And the other question is that how often is that you see that someone who comes with an already ongoing project, but it's aiming to look for potential synergies and partners within IESE students? Like how often do you see success on these new partnerships forming within students of the club?
Sorry, Daniel, was your second question related to the tech transfer component as well, or is that more general?
No, the second one was more general.
Okay, so start with the first one, which is around this tech transfer initiative that Sarah talked about. Basically, it pairs students with a business, or sometimes it's even pre-business. It's just a technology that's coming out of one of the scientific institutions in Barcelona. Like IESE has a lot of different partnerships with these scientific institutions, whether they're universities or, you know, nanotech centers or things like that, where they have projects going on. They want to start a business, but they're scientists really, and they need some business support. And that can be sometimes looking for fundraising. That could be sometimes, you know, business development. That could be sometimes creating a strategy. And so it's really just getting students to help out with that, and then they get other guidance from like you know, different areas of IESE. Like I mentioned, they talk to Luca, for example, and so they get more than just student support, but a big part of the program is students getting paired and helping them with that. My project last year was trying to find a pitch deck, trying to create a pitch deck for a company that needed funding to develop its technology further to the point where it can be commercialized. I don't know.
Yeah, mine was more advanced. So they had already gotten funding and they had launched their product in Europe and they were looking to go to the US. So they were just looking for like a marketing strategy plan on, you know, which states to focus on, distributors, stuff like that. So it was at a different stage.
But there was also Chris Galen, who was the class of 2020. He graduated last year and he took over like a company. He started with BTTG. He continued working with them part-time through the second year, and now he's actually CEO of Neutron, I think it's called, a company based here in Barcelona. So there are examples where participation in these programs, if you're really committed and you have a good synergy with the founder, could lead to more full-time opportunities in interesting ways for you if that is a path you want to pursue.
Does that partially answer the second question as well? I guess the second question was just about how successful are these partnerships between MBA students and some of the companies, right? I wasn't.
No, I think it's like.
I wasn't 100% sure if I understood that one.
How often synergies come from students that come in with a company or something established already, and other students, I believe. Is
that it, Daniel?
Yeah. The clarification that it was just mentioned it was more aimed to understand how often do you see success on new partnerships within students from the group, from the club, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Barcelona Tech Transfer Group, it's almost always successful for that specific project, and that startups keep coming back. Like it's in the 8th edition now, I think, and you know the group has quite a few stories where students have become employees there, or just the startup goes on and it uses the help and you know goes on its way. But I think they often get what they want out of it. That's why it keeps running. But I mean, in terms of like the scale, it's kind of like a getting what you put out kind of thing. Like, you know, sometimes a student, like Emily said, joins the founding team of the company, and that's like 10 out of 10 success. But there's sometimes where, you know, they continue a little bit longer and it doesn't make sense, and that's it. So maybe that's a 7 out of 10, I don't know. But, you know, like it's pretty good for both parties. It's just depending on the need, depending on the stage, and depending on the student's involvement, like it varied, I would say, what happens afterwards.
I think Daniel, for example, someone in my class right now is coming in with an established sort of olive oil exporting business, and I know that he is at a stage where he's looking, you know, at what the next steps are. And I know that he's been really active in speaking to lots of different people within our year to get ideas, but you know, potentially looking for a partner to join as well to help him expand his business. So I don't know what the actual success rate of you know, students finding other students and growing is, but it definitely happens, like Robert or like Emily said earlier, where you talk with your classmates and then you start to realize like, oh, there's more entrepreneurs in the class than I expected, and synergies just naturally happen, I would say.
Yeah, I don't think it's not you come and there's a process and there's this, like it comes from your own initiative, and people all take their own journeys, and you need them to take their own journeys. There's another project that I'm working on with somebody who started out not knowing if they want to be an entrepreneur, and they've come kind of full around, and now like they've taken full initiative of this project that we're working on together, and it's super exciting to see that. But I think that's something that, like Sarah said, evolves naturally, and Startup Club, that's also why we have so many different initiatives, because each of them is kind of like a different touch point or a different opportunity for you to talk to other people, find out what they're interested in, maybe learn a skill, or just see who else is casting about in this area, and you know, who knows what's gonna come out of it, right? There's some bit of it that's just has to happen naturally for these things to work.
Yeah, it's a very transformative experience, the MBA. For example, Fede started the call as a student and business developer, and now he's a chatbot. So it's quite impressive what can happen over the course of the MBA. Neha, I think, Neha, sorry, I'm not sure if I pronounced your name right.
Neha is good.
Neha.
Yeah, I would just like to mention, great question, Daniel, on collaboration inside the community. What I wanted to ask was that I'm a prospective applicant. So is it okay if I join the club before the application process happens? Like I can join the club and experience it, and even if I don't get through, could I be a part of the club, because I'm based locally in Europe and I am into entrepreneurship. So
I think maybe I'll defer to Kelly or Andrea. I think the answer is no, because I think you need access to the system to be able to join the club. You can follow us on Instagram, but no, right, Kelly? Is that, or does anyone, sorry, I'm putting you guys on the spot. I'm not sure actually if you guys are the right people to ask, but I think the answer is no.
I mean, technically, no, exactly. So the main things about the club probably will be once you're in IESE and you've been admitted, also in the different process and steps of the process, then you will have more information. But as long as you haven't been admitted and you haven't had to secure your spot at IESE, information is limited, but obviously you can actually reach out to the students that are in part of the Entrepreneurship Club, and it can help you and they can answer some of the questions you might have.
Or are there some events where I could collaborate with one of the current students, but as an outsider, I could participate in case I don't get through, you know, because I'm a prospective applicant, I may or may not get through. So if I get through, then obviously I could be part of the club as my legacy later, but there's no guarantee if I would get through. So in case I fail then in making it to IESE, then are there some events where, because I've heard of some events at some other universities where you collaborate with one Cambridge student and you're an outsider, but you know, you can participate in the event later on.
Yeah. I mean, I love the dedication to the club. I think, you know, depending on what the event is and you know how the collaboration will work, I think there's opportunities for that. I mean, now you know our names and know that you can find us on LinkedIn. I mean, let's keep in touch. But yeah, I mean, I guess it would depend on the event. Some events, many events are just for IESE students.
No problem. Yeah. Thank you.
Was anyone next?
Fede, is there any question that we've missed in the chat?
Fede's answering everyone's questions all the
I think
time.
I have answered all of them. Stefania, Jacques, I think you go next.
Hi everyone.
Yeah,
I do have a question. I'm also a prospective applicant, so I'm in the same situation as we have heard. But I have a situation here. Like I work in the family business, and this is like partially part of the reason why I want to do an MBA. But I also saw that there's this family business club. So I wanted to know whether like these two clubs are exclusive to, like, whether you can be in both, if it makes sense to be in both. So how would you guys approach this?
Well, they are separate clubs, but we do a lot of cross-club collaboration. Family business is one that it makes a lot of sense, like you mentioned, because a lot of people are here from their family business, but they want to maybe start a new business line within that business, and so they're involved in both clubs. Sometimes we do events that are hosted by the different clubs. I mean, typically people are involved, especially at the start of IESE, I would say all the way through, are involved in more than one club. Sometimes you have one that you're more interested in and one that you're in the communications with them, but let's say you don't go to every event because there's a lot of events on campus from different clubs. But we definitely collaborate with many of them. Like family business is one. The tech club has a fair bit of overlap with us in a lot of events. The venture capital club, because we need money and they have money. So there are a lot of areas where there's crossover between clubs. Many students, like I said, these clubs, the cost is pretty low. So many students sign up for many of them. And then just how involved you are, depends on where your interest is. In your first year, you pick a couple of them in I think, Sarah, for example, is a director in the S&E club, but also in the Women in Business Club. Are there any others? No, yeah, okay, so yeah. But so that's the, people definitely spread across multiple clubs, and there's lots of collaboration between them.
Okay, thanks.
But last thing I would say is that the Family Business Club, just, I don't know if this is, I would argue it's slightly more specific in terms of the students that are interested by it, because most of the students are coming from family business, right? So startup and entrepreneurship is pretty broad. We have about 1/3 of students that join. Family business, I think, is slightly smaller in terms of club just membership. So by virtue of that, we have slightly more events. And so we collaborate with some of them, but we have many events that are separate where they would join, but they're not like, let's say, in the organization of. I don't know.
So in the end, you would say, sorry. So in the end, you would say that it's more like worth it just to join both clubs and that's it, right?
I think yes. Yeah, you can't go wrong.
Also, we're entrepreneurship club, so we're always looking for partnerships. That was not promising the crowd like startup questions, but I think this started in confinement because in Barcelona confinement was very strict and we had nothing to do. So we started the Crown and everybody was playing every single night at 8. We loved doing this big quiz. We were giving out prizes, but like a startup, our cash burn was pretty high because we were giving toilet paper every night as a prize to people. And so eventually we got other clubs to start sponsoring the Crown, so that it would be like 1 week was the Crown with India Business Club, and there were all questions about India, or the Crown with like Family Business Club, and then there would all be questions about famous family businesses. So that in that sense, entrepreneurship crosses over everything else, and we're looking for partnerships.
Sweet. Just if I may ask something else, how have you guys dealt with the whole COVID situation? Like, have you been able to meet to do your the activities and all sorts? Because I guess that it's not just like fairs and working per se events that you do. You also do some networking, which also includes going to bars and stuff. So how have you guys been dealing with this?
Yeah, we can't go to bars right now. I think, so my opinion as a first year student, and I don't know, I guess it's slightly different because since coming to ESA, it's been this new normal, and I've never gotten to experience what it's like pre-COVID. But I think I feel as though I've still been able to network quite well. So, you know, for certain events like idea pitch day, I think last year, you know, there were a ton of people in a classroom. I think there were beers and stuff. It was a very different environment. And this year was on Zoom, unfortunately, but I found that people were still quite engaged. I think, you know, for example, the club has done a lot of cool, like, creative activities in smaller groups where we've tried to you know, still be able to mingle. Obviously, being able to come to campus every single day is huge, and that already just helps. We've also implemented, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Slack, but there's something on Slack called the Donut Bot. So that randomly matches you up with someone else within the donut channel every 1 or 2 weeks and suggests that you go and get coffee or lunch. So that's another way we've tried to encourage networking within the club. And for Startup School, we're planning on running like community startup lunches every 2 weeks on our terrace. Because the weather's always good in Barcelona. So we would, you know, reserve a few tables on the terrace for people participating in Startup School to just come and have lunch with each other. You can just drop by whenever you're available, to also help build a sense of community. But also in that sense, of course, you're only able to be at a table of 4 maximum, and you have to have your mask on at all times unless you're eating or drinking. So we've tried to find ways to do the best with the current situation. But as Robert said, I think by next year, things will be, well, I don't know when things will be a lot better. And we have like so many cool ideas for events that we want to run. So hopefully by the time you guys come here, this isn't as big of an issue.
Fantastic, thank you.
Who is next? Did anyone, let's see the chat. Fede, anything that you want to add based on
Actually, I've asked about the first year and the second year, and Fede mentioned the summer internship on entrepreneurship. So if you can talk more about that, and if there is any funding also for that period, or if you have to not get, like, invest that time, if you can talk a little bit about that.
Robert.
Yeah, so actually Robert and I did it together, so we can talk about it together. It's like all entrepreneurship, it's something that has to come from you. And it's very geared towards, and that was also the circumstances, right? But it's very geared towards more learning how to test assumptions and find audiences, usually through digital means. There's no funding, as like last year, there was no funding specifically for that program. I think we didn't end up spending an excessive amount ourselves either. It depends on the founders, but there are people who came out of the program who ended up investing significant amounts of money, all of them to go to production with their products. So there are also real companies that can emerge from this kind of program. If you're interested in it, it's a fantastic opportunity to learn entrepreneurship. And I would, Rob, I don't know if I'm allowed to go, like, in my personal opinion, I think it's a fantastic opportunity to try entrepreneurship rather than to try out your dream idea. So what I mean by that is that it's a great opportunity to really get to experiment with the tools, with the experience, to work with people day in, day out, see like the stressful situations, see how you guys work and think and talk through things, learn some digital marketing, get advice from some very, very high quality mentors through the program. But I would say that it's also a great space to just try those concepts without having maybe like a new brand of helicopter drone or something, without making your product over technical. And if you approach it as that, then I think it can be a great experience. I don't know.
Yeah, I 100% agree with everything. I mean, it's a 3-month experience, and afterwards you come back to ESA as a full-time student. And second year, you have a bit more time to continue on with side projects, but you're still not going to have the same like full-time that you would have in the summer. So you want to choose something that you can make meaningful progress on in a 3 or 4 month period, rather than something that needs years of research and development and things like that. Which Emily and I learned the hard way because we tried to develop a dishwasher company. We could talk more about that maybe offline, but that was our golden idea. And so, you know, just something like that with the amount of engineering required for something like that, given the resources that we had, you know, it was very hard to develop, to actually make meaningful progress on the product side in a summer. And we made progress elsewhere, more from the digital side, but I think that's, you know, that gives you an idea of the types of projects that are good for that summer thing. But a great experience, I would recommend it.
Thanks.
I just wanted to ask if are there any sustainability-led projects, entrepreneurship projects on the side of sustainability that are currently going on?
It's a space a lot of people are interested in. Sustainability is really, really broad. So I think I don't know exactly what you mean. I don't know of anybody that's setting up like a wind farm.
But there's Selva, which is yeah, there's a project. So in second year, there's a course called NAVE, which is New Ventures, which let's say it's similar to startup school in a way, but it's with more guidance from ESE because it's a proper course, and you have a professor who's very good at kind of orienting students, and you know, the startup school is like for the students, by the students. This is, you know, you have this support of a professor, but basically students give ideas, they form teams, and then they work on that idea through the course, and they get some input from the professor and some investors. And so one student from a sustainability side, well, I was on his team, but he's still going with it, is working on a project that's basically around planting trees and have people donate monthly to plant trees to offset their carbon emissions. So that's a sustainability focused product. I mean, it's a platform, right? It's like he's not physically planting trees, he's building a web page that directs funds. But that's an area of sustainability. I mean, like Emily said, it's a broad state. There's, you know, a lot of interest there because the ESE also has a responsible business club, which is quite involved in sustainability as one of their areas of interest.
Yeah, I shall add that one of the things that surprised me positively, but surprised me about IESE is how into sustainability are people, right? So obviously I'm coming from software myself, so I was quite surprised that everyone was into like sustainability. So definitely there will be projects.
What was the name of the professor that you mentioned, please?
In the second year course, New Ventures, it's Matthew Corenzo is a professor at ESA.
Sorry, Matthew?
Corenzo.
Oh, great. And I hope this club is available to all programs across the executive MBA and the regular MBA and
the executive MBA and some of the other more executive programs at ESA, I mean, run on a very different schedule in that they're not full time. So the executive MBA, for example, has their own startup club, which has, you know, initiatives that are more geared towards people at that stage in their careers and interests. We do some collaboration with them in events that make sense, but it is, you know, it's I guess it's a different program, and they have different, you know, interests in entrepreneurship, so the clubs run slightly different initiatives.
But is there any overlap, like you mentioned that there's an overlap between the family business club and the tech club? So is there any overlap with the startup club of the executive MBA program as well?
Yes.
Oh, great. Yeah, thank you.
Hi again. Guys, if I may ask, is there a web page or a brochure that has the startups founded by ESE students or alumni? That would be great.
Sorry, startups founded by students from ESE?
Yeah, so if there is a web page or a brochure that has, you know, just like a list of startups and founders, startups founded by ESE graduates or ESE students, is there a way is this information available anywhere?
I'm not that sure we have something like that prepared. I can tell you 3, 4, 5 that are top of mind. To me, Travel Perk, Cultra, Force Manager, Typeform, but well, I am really towards software myself, so probably many of the ones I told you are software as a service. But if you Google, you will be able to find many of them. Like as Robert said, a significant portion of the people that go through IESE business school found a business at some point of time, being it a startup or not, right? So definitely the school is well positioned in that entrepreneurship scene.
Yeah, so in terms of alumni, I mean, there's the IESE alumni group that maybe admissions has more information. I think there's a couple links that were just posted in the chat from the admissions team. So that would be, I think, a better place to start. I think the club is more focused. I mean, we link with alumni a lot, but I think we're more, let's say, aware of like the current students and student body.
Yes, exactly. Actually, Natalia just posted about a blog, and also I posted about the 40 under 40, which was a award given in 2018. So you have a lot of the, like about 40 entrepreneurs that came from me.
Perfect, thank you.
Cool. I think we're coming close to time. Maybe if we have one more question, and then, I mean, obviously you guys can find us afterwards, but yep, Ivan, go ahead.
Yes, my question is going to be similar to Mohammed. I'd like to ask if you could give any examples of people who came as speakers within some events that you organized as a club in the past. They may be alumni, but they may be just from the outside. But anyone who came in the past as a speaker. Thank you very much.
Sure. The most recent one was the CEO of Flywire, which is, you know, once you go through the admissions process, it's pretty much how you pay IESE. It's a payments fintech company that works with IESE and how you pay for admissions to many schools, I think, in North America and Europe. And so he was the CEO, and they were ranked or they were valued, I think, just over $1 billion last year. I think in new ventures we had some people like Avi Mayer was another one that came to IESE. Who's Travel Perk, a co-founder of Travel Perk. Carlota, what's her last name? P is a co-founder of Hullabaloo's, a utility, like a sustainable utility here in Barcelona. So that's a combination of, I think, maybe some of the more well-known names that we've had on IESE, either through the club or through the, like, you know, there's a global leadership series where IESE invites people and organizes. So those are probably some of like the big headline names. And then through the club, I mean, for specific events, we have, let's say, more specific speakers. So we did one on testing assumptions and doing A/B testing on your webpage. And we had a really good speaker from eDreams, which is basically like a travel booking website, but he's like a product manager for them. And so he came and talked about, you know, how they test things on their website. And so, you know, he's more of a, let's say, mid-level executive, and maybe not a name that you would know in the news, but, you know, super helpful and relevant for the sake of that session.
And one
really big names. Sorry,
no, I was about to say that one of the good things about IESE is that just by having the name of the school in your headline in LinkedIn, you can reach out to anyone, and he will be more than interested into organizing a conversation with you. Like the other day, we had one with one of the largest venture capitals in South America, in Latin America, right? The guy was an early employee at Mercado Libre, and he was like an investor in many unicorns in Latam, and he was more than willing to spend 1 hour of their time just talking with us, right? So if there is someone that is interesting to you, like, you have a more than good chance to reach out in the name of the IESE student body and organize the talk, right? That's something that you can definitely use while you are here. And like, before coming for me, it was impossible, right? To get to talk to that people, like, wasn't even a possibility, right?
So I think we're coming up to time. Eventually we'll have to go to class. The want to thank you guys for joining. I know you guys are scattered across the world in different jobs and other commitments. So thanks for spending an hour with us. I'll leave up here as you guys just sign off our names so you can find us on LinkedIn and ask any further questions that you have. We may not have the answers from within IESE, but chances are we know who might have them. So between us and the admissions team, Kelly and Andrea that are on, I think you should be good to go. It was nice to hear from you guys. Anything else, Kelly or Andrea? Or is that...
Thank you very much, Startup and Entrepreneurship Club. You've been amazing. And thank you everybody for attending, and we'll be coming more with more sessions with other clubs. Have a good day.
Bye. See you.